My fiancée mocked my late father during family dinner, so I ended the engagement, and the consequences completely ruined their perfect celebration. I'm a 30-year-old guy, and my dad was my hero. He wasn't just a parent, he was everything I wanted to be. After my mom passed when I was 9, he became both mother and father, working double shifts at the auto shop to keep food on the table and still making it home in time to help me with homework. He used to say, "Respect doesn't come from what you have, son. It comes from how you treat people." That line still echoes in my head every time I make a big decision. Growing up, we didn't have much, but he made sure I never felt poor. Our house smelled like engine oil and burnt coffee, and somehow that felt like safety. He taught me to stay humble, to listen more than I speak, and to never forget where I came from. Losing him 2 years ago felt like someone ripped the ground out from under me. Even now, there are mornings I still catch myself reaching for my phone, about to text him something funny, before remembering he's gone. Then came Hannah. She walked into my life about a year after Dad's funeral, confident, kind, and beautiful, in a way that made me believe maybe life still had room for happiness. She was supportive at first, though she always changed the subject when I talked about Dad. I thought maybe grief made her uncomfortable, and I didn't push it. She had her own family stories, strict parents, high standards, and a world that moved a lot faster than mine. Still, I believed we balanced each other out. So when our families finally agreed to meet for a dinner to celebrate our engagement, I felt proud, nervous, but proud. It was like introducing my past to my future. I had no idea that night would change everything I thought I knew about her, and about love itself. Hannah had this way of lighting up a room, or at least, that's what everyone said. She carried herself like she belonged anywhere, with that polished confidence that made people stop mid-conversation. To me, she was perfect. I used to tell my friends, she's everything I'm not, graceful, ambitious, driven, and in a way that was true. I came from grease-stained hands and late-night diner meals. She came from wine glasses and business dinners. At first, those differences didn't matter. She'd tease me about my old truck or my worn-out jackets, but it felt playful. I thought her laughter meant love, not judgment. Looking back, maybe I mistook tolerance for affection. There were moments, small, almost invisible, that should have told me who she really was. Like when she winced as I held the door open for her father, or when she said, "You really don't have to be so formal," after I insisted on thanking a waiter by name, once she met one of my dad's old coworkers at the grocery store. The man called me my boy and patted my shoulder, reminiscing about how proud my father was of me. Hannah smiled politely but rolled her eyes as soon as he left. "You don't need to keep living in the past," she said, tucking her hair behind her ear. "You've moved up. Act like it." Her words stung, but I brushed them off. I told myself she just didn't understand. Despite those cracks, I stayed blinded by love. I kept thinking that, once she really saw where I came from, met my family, heard the stories, felt the warmth, she'd understand why I was the way I am. That dinner was my chance to show her that love isn't about money or image. But when she looked at me that night and said, "Let's just hope your family behaves decently," something inside me twisted, a warning I didn't yet know how to read. The night of the dinner felt like a milestone, one of those evenings you look back on years later and smile about. My aunt had set the table beautifully at her house, with candles flickering and the smell of roasted chicken filling the room. My family was buzzing with excitement. They'd heard so much about Hannah and were eager to meet the woman I planned to spend my life with. Even my sister, who can be overly protective, had taken the night off work just to be there. Hannah arrived in a fitted dress, radiating confidence. Her parents followed, polished, reserved, the kind of people who sized up a room before deciding how to act. At first, everything went smoothly. My uncle cracked jokes, my aunt poured wine, and I could almost feel Dad's presence in the laughter. We shared old family stories like how Dad once fixed a neighbor's car for free because a good deed is worth more than a paycheck. Everyone chuckled warmly. Everyone except Hannah. She forced a small smile but leaned toward her mother and whispered something. I caught a faint eye roll, but I ignored it. Maybe she was just nervous. But then her father asked what my dad did for a living, and when I proudly said he was a mechanic, the best one in our town, Hannah laughed softly and said, "Oh, right, the car guy. You really talk about him like he was a professor or something." The room fell silent. My sister's fork clattered against her plate. My aunt's face dropped. I felt my throat tighten, my pulse hammering in my ears. Hannah glanced around, suddenly realizing no one else found it funny. She mumbled, "I was just joking," and sipped her wine. But the air had changed. Every smile felt strained after that, and for the first time since meeting her, I saw something I couldn't unsee, the quiet contempt behind her charm. When the dinner finally ended, it felt like someone had pulled the plug on the warmth in the room. My family excused themselves politely, but I could see the disappointment written all over their faces. My sister didn't even say goodbye to Hannah. She just muttered, "Unbelievable," and walked out to her car. I stood there in the doorway, forcing a smile as Hannah waved them off, completely oblivious to the damage she'd done. Once we got in the car, I broke the silence. "What was that, Hannah?" "What you said about my dad." My voice was calm, but my chest was tight. She didn't even look up from her phone. "Oh, come on," she said, laughing lightly. "It was a joke. You're seriously upset over that. Everyone's so sensitive." I clenched the steering wheel. "You mocked a man who isn't here to defend himself. My family adored him." "That wasn't a joke," she sighed dramatically. "You really need to stop living in your dad's shadow. He's gone. Babe, move on. This hero worship thing, it's weird." Her words hit me like a slap. I pulled over, staring at her, trying to find some trace of remorse. There was none. She just crossed her arms and looked out the window. "You embarrassed me tonight," she said quietly. "Your sister was rude, and your family clearly doesn't fit in with mine." That was the moment something cracked inside me. I realized the woman I thought I loved didn't see me. She saw a project, someone she could polish into her version of perfect. But I stayed silent, staring at the road ahead as I drove her home. Her perfume filled the car, but all I could smell was the ghost of my father's garage, oil, sweat, and truth. And for the first time, I wondered if I'd made the biggest mistake of my life. That night, I couldn't sleep. I lay awake replaying every word Hannah said, every look she gave at that dinner table. My chest felt heavy, like my father's memory had been dragged through the mud, and I'd done nothing to stop it. I hated myself for staying quiet. Sometime after midnight, I went into the garage, the place Dad and I used to spend weekends fixing his old Chevy. The smell of oil and rust hit me like a wave of nostalgia. His old tools were still there, neatly arranged on the wall, each one marked by his calloused hands. I ran my fingers along the wrench he used to say was his lucky one. I could almost hear him say, "Never let anyone make you feel small for being honest, son." That memory tore something open in me. I realized I'd been spending the past year trying to impress a woman who would never understand what my father's lessons meant. He raised me to see dignity in humility, something Hannah seemed to mock without even realizing it. The next morning, I decided to give her the benefit of the doubt. I called her and asked if we could talk. She agreed, sounding cheerful, as if nothing had happened. When we met for coffee, she was scrolling on her phone, smiling. "You wouldn't believe the likes on our engagement photo," she said. "It's getting so much attention." I asked if she'd thought about what happened at dinner. She shrugged. "You're really still stuck on that. It's not my fault your family's so touchy. They act like you're the only person who's ever lost someone." Something inside me went cold. Her words weren't careless, they were cruel. I realized then that she didn't avoid my grief because it made her uncomfortable. She avoided it because it didn't serve her, and for the first time, I began to see Hannah for who she truly was. A few weeks later, Hannah's parents hosted our official engagement party, a lavish event at a hotel ballroom. Everything about it screamed excess: crystal chandeliers, champagne towers, even a live band playing jazz in the corner. Hannah looked stunning in a silver gown, basking in attention like it was oxygen. Her parents beamed as they greeted guests, proud of the perfect couple their daughter had landed. I tried to keep my focus on the celebration, but there was a pit in my stomach I couldn't shake. My family was there too, more reserved, out of place among the designer suits and shallow compliments. My sister squeezed my hand and whispered, "Don't let her embarrass you again." I promised her I wouldn't let anything ruin the night. Then Hannah took the microphone. Her mother encouraged her with a proud nod, and I figured she wanted to thank everyone for coming. But as she began to speak, her tone shifted. "You know," she said with a smirk, "when I first met my fiancé, I couldn't believe how old-fashioned he was. He'd quote his dad like it was the Bible. His father taught him to fix cars, not emotions." Laughter rippled through the room. I froze. My mom's eyes welled up, my sister's jaw dropped, and my aunt set down her glass hard enough to make it clink. Hannah continued, milking the moment. I mean, he's sweet, don't get me wrong, but sometimes I feel like I'm marrying a mechanic's ghost. The laughter died. The silence that followed was deafening. I stood there, numb, feeling my face flush as humiliation clawed up my throat. I walked off the stage before she could finish, ignoring the confused murmurs behind me. Later that night, she texted me, "You overreacted. Don't make this about your dead dad again." That message shattered me. I sat in my car outside the venue, phone trembling in my hand, realizing I was engaged to someone who could mock the dead and still think she was right. I didn't sleep that night. I just sat on the couch, staring at the engagement ring sitting on the table, its diamond catching the faint light from the street outside. It felt meaningless now, like a symbol of something fake, something I couldn't stand behind anymore. Every word Hannah had said echoed in my head, not because they were cruel. She hadn't made a mistake. She'd revealed herself. By sunrise, I'd made my decision. Not in anger, in clarity. I got dressed, took the ring, and wrote a letter. It wasn't long, but it was honest. I thanked her for the good moments, told her I wished her well, and said that I couldn't marry someone who disrespected the man who raised me. I ended it with one line my dad used to say, "You can't build a future with someone who laughs at your foundation." When I drove to her apartment, the city was still half asleep. I left the letter and the ring on her doorstep and walked away before I could change my mind. There were no tears, no dramatic scene, just the quiet relief of finally doing what my father would have wanted me to do. Around noon, my phone started buzzing, first with missed calls, then messages. "Hannah, are you kidding me? Hannah, you're making a scene. Hannah, you'll regret this. You just ruined everything." I didn't reply. My sister came over that afternoon and hugged me so tight I could barely breathe. "Dad would be proud of you," she whispered. I wanted to believe that dot still. Part of me wondered what everything meant. I thought she was just angry about the breakup. But I had no idea the storm she was about to start and how far she'd go to get revenge. The days after the breakup felt strangely quiet. I went to work, came home, cooked dinner, and tried to rebuild a sense of normalcy. My phone barely stopped buzzing for the first week. Texts, voicemails, even mutual friends asking what happened. I stayed silent. I wasn't going to turn something sacred, like my father's memory, into a public argument. But Hannah didn't share that restraint. Within days, she'd rewritten the story. On social media, she posted a long, carefully worded note. "It's heartbreaking when someone you love can't handle emotional growth. I guess some people just stay stuck in the past." The photo attached was her holding the ring, the same one I'd left behind, with a caption about betrayal and immaturity. Her friends flooded the comments with sympathy. I watched quietly as my name became an unspoken villain in her curated narrative. Then came the whispers. Mutual friends told me she'd been saying I had anger issues, that my family had embarrassed her at the dinner. Some of her coworkers even reached out to me, hinting I should clear my name. But I didn't. I just said, "She can tell her story. I know mine." My sister, though, wasn't as forgiving. She posted a single comment under Hannah's post. "Funny how you mock dead fathers and still call yourself the victim." That one comment lit a fire. Hannah's friends went on the defensive, twisting everything into pity for her. But then I found out something she hadn't planned for. Her company had offered her a promotion, tied to a brand campaign about building strong family values, the same image she'd used me for. Without the engagement, the timing looked bad. She started losing ground at work, and her perfect reputation began to crack. When I heard through a mutual friend that she'd said, "He'll regret ever crossing me," I felt a chill crawl up my spine. I thought she was just lashing out, but I was wrong. She was about to take things even further. A few weeks later, my sister's wedding was approaching, small, intimate, and meaningful. It was supposed to be a fresh start for all of us after the chaos. My sister had been my rock through everything, and I was determined to make her day perfect. We'd rented a cozy venue outside the city, decorated with wildflowers and old photos of family, including Dad's picture near the altar. Just seeing his face smiling back felt like he was there, blessing the moment. But trouble has a way of showing up when you least expect it. Halfway through the reception, I saw a movement near the entrance, and my stomach dropped. Hannah, dressed to kill, holding a glass of champagne like she owned the place. Her parents trailed behind, faces tight with forced smiles. Guests turned to stare, whispers rippling through the crowd. My sister's smile faltered when she saw her, and I could see the anger boiling just beneath her calm expression. Before I could reach her, Hannah raised her glass. "Congratulations to the happy couple," she said, loud enough for everyone to hear. "It's so lovely to see such humble celebrations. I was just telling my parents how much this reminds me of your brother's family. So simple, so real." The way she lingered on that last word made my blood run cold. My uncle stood up, his voice sharp. "You're not welcome here, young lady." But she ignored him and kept talking, pretending to laugh. "Oh, relax. I'm just being friendly. Besides, I think people should know how easily appearances can fool you. Some folks like to play the poor, wounded soul while hiding their true colors." Before I could step in, my uncle slammed his drink down and said, "Enough." The entire room froze as he looked straight at Hannah's father. "Tell your daughter to stop before she embarrasses herself further. Especially since your business owes my late brother for the free repairs he did when you couldn't afford to pay." Gasps filled the air. Hannah's face drained of color. Her father's mouth opened, then closed again. The room went completely silent, except for the sound of her glass shattering on the floor. The silence that followed was like a punch to the gut, heavy, cold, and merciless. Every pair of eyes turned toward Hannah and her parents. Her father's face went pale, his hand trembling as he set his drink down. "That's not true," he muttered weakly. But my uncle didn't flinch. "It is," he said firmly. "Your transmission blew out 3 summers ago. Remember? My brother spent 2 days fixing it in his shop. Refused to take a dime from you. Said, 'We help when we can.' That was the kind of man he was. The one your daughter thought was a joke." Whispers spread through the room like wildfire. My aunt's eyes glistened with tears. My mom covered her mouth, and my sister just stared, frozen between shock and fury. Hannah's perfect posture wilted. "That's ridiculous," she stammered, her voice cracking. No one remembers that. But someone did. The DJ, of all people, an old friend from town, spoke up. "I was there that day," he said quietly. "Your dad showed up with his car on a tow truck. The old man didn't even charge him. Told him to pay it forward." A collective murmur swept the room, followed by a suffocating silence. Hannah looked around, desperate, searching for someone, anyone, to defend her. But all she found were stares of disgust and pity. Her mother tugged her arm, whispering something through clenched teeth, but Hannah pulled away. "You're all making me out to be the villain," she shouted. "You don't know what he's like." But no one believed her anymore, not after everything. She stormed out, heels clacking against the floor, eyes blazing with humiliation. Her parents followed, their heads down, faces burning. As the door slammed behind them, my sister's wedding slowly came back to life, but the damage had been done. I stood near the doorway, looking at my father's photo on the table, his quiet smile glowing beneath the fairy lights. For the first time in years, I didn't feel grief. I felt peace, like he'd just defended himself through the people he once helped. The days after my sister's wedding felt strangely still, as if the world had finally taken a deep breath. For the first time since my father passed, the weight on my chest began to lift. I kept thinking about that moment, my uncle's voice cutting through the noise, the truth echoing in that hall. It wasn't revenge that satisfied me. It was justice. My dad's kindness, something Hannah had mocked, had come back to speak louder than anything I could have said. I drove back to my hometown the following weekend, just me and the sound of gravel crunching beneath my tires. The old auto shop still stood there, dusty but solid, the sign faded but intact. I parked out front and walked inside. The air smelled like oil and iron, like memory. My father's toolbox was still sitting in the corner, his name etched faintly on the lid. I ran my hand over it, feeling the grooves. The years of work he'd poured into every bolt and gear. I whispered, "You were right, Dad. Respect doesn't come from what you have. It comes from how you live." For a while, I just stood there in silence. No anger, no bitterness, just the quiet kind of peace that comes after finally letting go. I thought about how I'd let Hannah's cruelty define me for too long, how I'd mistaken endurance for love. But love without respect is just control dressed up in charm. Before I left, I placed a small photo of him, the one from his last birthday, on the workbench. Then I walked outside and looked up at the open sky. The ache in my chest didn't hurt anymore. It just reminded me of everything he taught me, and in that stillness, I made myself a promise. I'd never again let someone make me ashamed of where I came from, because my foundation wasn't something to hide, it was something to stand on. A year later, life looked completely different. I'd moved to a quieter town, closer to where Dad used to take me fishing on weekends. My days were simple: work, the gym, long walks by the lake. Peaceful, in a way I didn't think was possible again. Sometimes I'd catch myself thinking about Hannah, not with bitterness, but with distance, like remembering someone from another lifetime. One evening, I attended a charity fundraiser for local businesses. I'd been invited through work, and as I walked in, shaking hands and exchanging smiles, a familiar name caught my ear. Someone mentioned Hannah. I froze, listening quietly. The man continued, "Yeah, her family went under. Her dad's company lost most of its clients after that wedding drama went public. She moved out of state, last I heard. She's doing freelance PR work online. Rough fall." I didn't say anything. I just nodded and moved on, the noise of the room fading into the background. There was no satisfaction, no vengeance burning in my chest, just a quiet sense of closure. Karma didn't need an audience. It had already done its work. Later that night, I drove out to my father's old shop again. The sign had rusted further, the paint peeling, but it still stood tall. I sat on the hood of my car, looking up at the stars, the same ones we used to watch together. "I think I finally get it, Dad," I whispered. "You always said, dignity doesn't need defending, because it defends you when you need it most." The wind carried through the trees, soft and cool, almost like an answer. I smiled, took a deep breath, and for the first time in years, felt completely free, because in the end, she ruined her own celebration, and I got my peace back.